what is your opinion on the Libya intervention and the War Powers Act?
Well, of course, the War Powers Act has been violated by every president since it was passed. It was interesting, so many Republicans voted with Dennis Kucinich. I mean, Dennis Kucinich is, every geek in high school wishes they were Dennis Kucinich. A short, ugly guy with big ears who married a very hot woman. Now, these were fantasies of some of us, in high school who couldn't get the cheerleader to go out with us. But, anyway, she's gorgeous. Anyhow, and he knows it. And it's the best thing he's got going. So he got all these Republicans voting with him on this thing the other day. I think if you're going to have a law, I feel the same way about immigration and other things, then the law ought to be obeyed. And if you're not going to have the law and violate it, then you need to repeal it. But you shouldn't just have a law and then wink, wink, we're not really going to do it. Is it viable or isn't? There ought to be a debate about it. I think Libya is a big mistake. It goes back to what I said earlier about it can't be the policeman of the world. There are plenty of dictators out there. Clinton used to say his biggest mistake is he didn't do something about the Rwanda genocide between the Hutus and the Tutsis. Terrible, horrible thing. Well, what is he going to do? Send in troops to Africa? Come on. What about the African Union? They're not doing anything. Why can't they send their own people in? They're right there on the same continent, for heaven's sakes. Again, we cannot do this, and I think we ought to be sending a message to the world. We want to help you if you're legitimate freedom fighters, not just some small cell in there. We want to assist you in any way we can. We'll help you write a constitution if you get in power. But we're just not going to be able to send troops and bombers and guns and ammo and everything else to every revolution, especially when you don't know how it's going to turn out. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of hope for Egypt. I really don't. I think, as bad as some of these dictators are, at least we knew how to deal with them. Hosni Mubarak was no pluralistic Democrat, but at least he kept the lid on. And I'm not sure I think we're going to regret that. I really do. Sort of like we regretted toppling the Shah in Iran and we got Khomeini instead. The devil you know is better than the one you don't know. I'll go with you and I'll do your follow-up. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the Middle East.
Yeah, where are you from, by the way?
I'm from Charlottesville and I go to UVA.
Oh, good. What are you taking?
I'm in law school.
Oh, good. Okay.
A lot of the dictators in the Middle East have received funding from the United States and have been basically propped up by the United States.
Yep.
So at least for me, it's easy to see why people living under those regimes hate the United States. So my question is, do you think that a policy of non-intervention would reduce blowback?
Very good question. That's very good. It's hard to say. Each country is different. As I'm sure you know, what we call the Middle East now is really a construct of Winston Churchill and Roosevelt and some of these other. I mean, a lot of these nations didn't exist as they do now. You have the Ottoman Empire. You have all these other things, right? So a lot of these things are phony states. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. What's that? The West Bank. All this is made up in a bunch of back rooms and things. I don't know, but I think again it goes back to what I was saying in response to Jim's question. I mean, people felt over Republican and Democratic administrations, and the one thing about the State Department, they're consistent in their idiocy. That the devil you know is better than the one you don't. You don't know what's going to come next, so they're going to keep the lid on. That was why we supported Tito in Yugoslavia for years, and he was the most benign of the communist dictators. But he kept the Serbs and the Croatians from each other's throats. Some of these racial and ethnic tensions that he kept the lid on. And so we said, well, that's good. We don't want a big war break, so we'll continue to. Never mind that he not letting elections and all that other stuff. At least we're not having a civil war. So that's preferable to whatever. Now, would we prefer a true democracy or republic? Well, sure. But you have to establish certain principles. America didn't just crop up overnight. The Magna Carta, go back to the Mayflower Compact, William Blackstone. Do you study William Blackstone at UVA?
Oh, yeah.
I'm shocked. All of this stuff, has to precede a democracy or a constitutional republic. That's what I think the big mistake is when you think that somehow we're going to be able to, well, I'll quote Margaret Thatcher from the UN Disarmament Conference, I think in 1979. She went there and she said, it's really a great line. We in the West make a mistake when we try to transpose, not impose, transpose our morality on those who don't share it.
Right.
That is really a great truth. So if you are not for, this goes back to your question about Afghanistan earlier, if you are not for human rights, equal rights for women, religious tolerance, pluralism, democracy, all this other stuff, and if you're into some other kind of religious, political, economic system, then the likelihood of my transposing all of these wonderful virtues that we have in America on you is nil. The follow-up question in the back, soon to be a White House correspondent, I can tell. Yes, sir. Yeah, well, actually, that's probably not in some circles.
Okay, so every major religion and holds to have had crazed minorities that literalize passages of text that they cherry-pick to suit their own political and personal views and aspirations for power. For instance, the Ku Klux Klan was a Christian organization that used the Bible to support itself, just as we can argue about terrorists, and we can argue about certain Jews and Hindus and Shintos and what have you. So what is essentially different about Islam from all the other non-Christian religions that we should be more suspicious of it? Shouldn't we be equally mindful of the evil of all non-Christians and, by extension, not just monitor mosques, etc., but also Jewish temples, Hasidic communities, Hindu shrines, those kinds of things. So what's essentially different about Muslim mindset?
You know, if you keep this up, you could have your own talk show, you know that? Really good questions. No, you're very good. I'm impressed, I really am. Where do you go? You go to UVA?
I did, I graduated.
You did? Okay, what are you doing now?
I'm working here.
No wonder you're intelligent. Yeah, okay, well, first of all, to call yourself Christian doesn't make you so. I can call myself anything. I can call myself a professional basketball player. I can call myself someone who really looks good without my shirt on. But that wouldn't make, you've seen me. That wouldn't make it true. You know, I can say anything. So if I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan, I can call myself a Christian organization or a Christian person.
So why call terrorists true Muslims then?
I'm sorry?
Then shouldn't we, by extension, not call terrorists true Muslims?
No, but they say they are. They say
Well, sure
that,
they do. So
well,
did the Klan.
Yeah.
well, they did, yes. But let me get back to your fundamental question. I think that the problem, among others, in Islam is that it has not evolved. Now, people like to go back to the Crusades and, you know, hundreds of years ago. Well, the Christian faith has evolved, and it is still evolving. Not in its foundational beliefs, but we've just been through this period, and I hope we're through it now, of the so-called religious right in the 1980s, thinking that they could reform what they perceived to be wrong in this country with a kind of trickle-down morality, as I call it, by electing the right people to office, that your daughter wouldn't get pregnant, tooth decay would be solved, the budget would be balanced, and everything would be fine. Well, you know, we've seen that having Republicans or conservatives in office doesn't protect you from that quality that Scripture calls sin that is in each of us, regardless of political parties. So Islam has not really seriously evolved. It is still basically a 15th, 16th century religion. Still, there has not been an updating. There's not been much scholarship in the Quran or the companion book, the sayings of Muhammad. And the reason for that is that the crazies, if you try to modernize anything, are likely to label you, and do, an infidel and deserving of death and put a fatwa out on you. So that has kind of a chilling effect on people who actually want to help Islam move forward. Now, I would be the first to say that an awful lot of Muslim people practice their faith in their personal life a whole lot better than some Christians, and probably me as well. They're very rigorous in certain personal things, and although I noticed that these 9/11 hijackers, you know, they all went to strip clubs and drank alcohol, and some of them, you know, watched pornography and other stuff before they went on this deal. So I'm not exactly sure how that related to martyrdom. But look, we all got our problems, right?
Okay, and so is Islam's essential problem, just to clarify what you said, that they haven't evolved to the point where they can differentiate the political sphere and the religious sphere?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a very important distinction, absolutely. And there are people out there wanting to help them. I mean, this country would be thrilled to be able to send some you know, modern Islamic scholars who have forsworn the terrorist imposition, forceful imposition of faith on others, to try to update their scriptures and the rest. But you know, they're not interested in that at the moment, at least the big ones. Anybody else who hadn't had a question? Now we'll take one or two more, then we'll stop. Yes, sir.
Could you comment on the Mideast peace process possibilities, Israel and Palestine?
Yes. Could I comment on the Middle East peace possibilities, Israel and Palestine? Zero.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen until the trumpet sounds, not gonna happen. Because you have one group of people that believe they're entitled to all of the land, the Jews are interlopers and don't belong there and deserve to be destroyed. And you have the others who believe that they have a biblical right to the land, and then they certainly have more proof of that through their history. And so they are what, as they call it in the California divorce cases, irreconcilable differences. Not going to happen. I think we're wasting our time.
Right,
The only reason we're involved there at all is because of oil.
right.
Yeah. Anyway, got one more? Anybody with a burning question, or can we wind it up? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, could you comment on the Republican race right now for president candidates?
Yes, I could. How do you spell? Not very exciting, I'll tell you. It's like a blind date I went on in high school. Probably worse for her than for me. But, well, look, last year I went down to New Orleans, or Baton Rouge, and interviewed Bobby Jindal, who I really liked. And he had a great line. He said, the Republican Party needs to decide what it stands for first, and the candidate will emerge out of that.
Right.
And I think that's true. And so we're debating. We've got, Romney's going to have a real serious problem defending Romney Care.
Right.
Obama's already praised him. When you got the guy you want to beat praising him,
Yeah.
sort of like being endorsed by the Klan when you're trying to establish your civil rights record. That's not a good step. So that's a problem. Pawlenty is an unknown. He was good to governor of Minnesota. Gingrich has got serious personal problems. He's been around the track. To me these days, okay, you get one divorce, but when you're on wife number 3, I think that's a character issue, frankly.
What about Giuliani?
Yeah, same thing. Giuliani.
Same thing.
Well, he hadn't got to win. He's from New York. No New Yorker is.
Jason
New Yorker's
Kane.
gonna win. Huh?
Herman Cain.
Herman Cain? Good pizza. That's about it. No, look, we've had people with no experience. We got one now.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter at least was governor of a state before he failed as a president. I think it is good to have a certain amount of executive experience, or at least governmental experience, because you're going to be the chief executive of the federal government, the largest institution in the world. And so you just don't, move in. I read the other day that the AOL Huffington Post merger is having trouble. My daughter, who's been in management for some time, said that's because they don't have anybody. They came in, they had hundreds of employees all of a sudden in this deal, and nobody at the top has any experience about managing people.
Right.
And so that's a problem. And so you need to come in, you need to have somebody who understands government and how it works. You wouldn't want to hire me to paint your portrait. I can't even do a roller on the wall. I'm not a painter. If you want somebody who's experienced and whose track record in painting you can take a look at before you commission me to do your portrait. So I think somebody will emerge, and whether it will be a last-minute entry like a Jeb Bush, I don't think Chris Christie. I think he's serious, but you never know. When you hear the call, it's a seductive thing. Somebody asked me, did I ever think about running for president or any public office? I said, well, the thought crossed my mind once, but I took 2 aspirin, laid down for a while. Somebody else said, if you ever want to discover your family tree, run for office and your opponent will. Although I must say, I did have, I'm not perfect, I've made my mistakes and the rest, but I did have the ultimate endorsement. Several years ago, I'm in the Fox green room, and to my surprise, in rolls a guy in a gold-plated wheelchair pushed by his aide, and it was Larry Flynn. And I'd met him a couple times. I said, hey, Larry, how you doing? I'm okay. How are you, Cal? I said, I'm fine. All right. He said, listen, this was when Larry was doing background investigations of people who, proclaim one thing and lived another life, So he said, I thought you'd like to know, we did a background investigation on you. I said, is that so? He said, yeah. We didn't find anything. So now I can say I have been personally endorsed by Larry Flynn. Yes. Thanks for coming today.